Welcome back. Next, we meet 26-year-old Mohamed Hisham, a member of the National Steering Committee of the Sri Lanka Youth Parliament, an organization which describes itself as one that brings together over 200 young people from all over the country who are working for change with the collective vision of creating a cohesive Sri Lanka. I spoke to him to find out his views about how young people can realistically participate in the affairs of the country and succeed in making a tangible impact. Hi Hisham, thanks for joining me on the program.
Thank you for having me here. Yeah, it's nice.
Now my first question to you is that now that the war is over, how important do you think it is that the youth as one separate entity on its own is involved in the post-conflict process?
Most of the young people, if you see for the last 25, 26 years, they've been living with this conflict. They never knew anything other than a war. So it's kind of interesting to see, like, all of a sudden you come to a day and then you realize that there's no more war. But it's also important for us to understand, in my personal opinion, that the armed conflict is over, yes, but there might be a lot of things to do in terms of bringing about change within the societies, because there may be historical suspicions and then misunderstandings and other myths around in the communities. So young people have to come into that level, and then maybe young people can be the bridge in developing these understanding between ethnic communities mainly.
So how do you think that young people can achieve this?
Okay, it's like if I take my personal experience with SLYP and other groups, like what happens is you have different projects and you have different initiatives which go on. So when you consider those, that will give you, for example, I happened to meet a person from Jaffna for the first time in my life 4 years ago when I took part in one of those sessions. I mean, that made a big difference in my life because I was coming from mainly predominantly southern background. So the same way, I think it's important that when you have person-to-person interaction and different initiatives, it helps to foster that understanding.
Okay, but how do you think the youth can be mobilized in a way that they have like real influence in the decision-making process?
What I feel is mainly like in Sri Lanka, the culture has got it's not yet that mature where young people can really say, okay, I have a say and let me have my legislator responsible for this issue or the other issue. So it's kind of, you have to go with the system for a while and maybe take some shortcuts in a way. Like, for example, if you have a young legislator or a policy maker whom you can approach quite easier than the others, maybe you talk to them and try to get them to work on issues or maybe create awareness.
So do you think this lack of awareness could be a reason why the youth haven't really been involved in the decision-making process in the country so far?
I think depends on the way you look at it. For example, if you see some people, what they think is when you say you want to get young people involved, they might just do a questionnaire or they might just do a kind of a meeting or an interview for the sake of doing and then say, okay, we've got feedback, forms filled, everything okay. That's one way of it. The other is like there are some initiatives or some people or some organization who really want to get along with young people and get the real grassroots feeling, but they sometimes don't know how exactly to get it done. So they might just tap on a few contacts or other. So it might be useful. It's kind of a chance you are taking. So what we are trying to do is trying to formalize. We have worked with different policy issues in the past. We want to work on a consolidated effort with other young organizations.
Hisham, you are part of the Youth Parliament, which is involved in many issues such as human rights and peace building and youth empowerment, among other things. What projects in particular are you involved in at the moment to include the youth in the decision-making process?
We have this overall objective called creating a cohesive Sri Lanka. So what we do is like in line with that objective, for example, at the moment we are involved in an advocacy on the National Youth Policy Draft, which we found had a lot of shortcomings, and we are happy that the Ministry of Youth Affairs has agreed to withdraw it and redraft it. The same way we have done a successful youth policy consultation on the National Youth Employment Policy, and also we are working with a few other projects.
Okay, but what about peace building and the conflict areas or the post-conflict areas? No.
Yes, that is something, because to be very frank, for me, if I were to say, this whole situation came much faster than expected in a way. Like we knew that the war was going to be over, but we never realized that such a urgent requirement will come in. So what we've got is like we have already had some programs in terms of skills for peace and conflict resolution and stuff like that. At the same time, we are trying to develop some other projects where mainly we are working with our action partners, especially in the north and the east, who have their own projects. Like they might have a kind of friendly football match or something to develop harmony between two communities. So simple projects rather than a big overarching project. So we are just working on those at the moment, but for sure it's time up for us to come up with a bigger overarching theme as well.
Okay. And finally, what do you think is the best way to get youth more actively involved and enthusiastic about being involved in the affairs of the country?
Okay, if I were to be giving a very honest feedback on it, 4 years back, if you were to have even a youth walk or some kind of a activity, it's very difficult for you to even get 3 people to be there apart from the organizers. But now times have changed where you see a lot of volunteerism, kind of a sense of volunteerism coming out of people, which is really good. At the same time, what we try to do is like we try to work on our networks so that if we can get our people to really work on it, like if you can approach the broader sector, like if I have a person in Matara, Jaffna and Batiklo, if each one of them can talk to their peers and get them to involve, that's the kind of encouragement we are doing, which is giving us very positive results.
Well, best of luck in all your endeavors, Hisham. Thanks so much for joining me on the program.
Bye-bye.